Hello everybody, a warm welcome to Wisdom from North. I'm Jannecke, and today you're truly in for a treat. I'm sitting here with Øyvind Aamot, who's had an extraordinary experience that few in the world can relate to. In 2000, he lost his memory. Being in China, he knew not who he was, where he came from, or how society worked at all. Now, in the process back, he discovered how cultures are built, and he received an insight on how relations are developed. And today he works as a China expert. He works with the government and different organizations and help build relationships and build bridges between cultures. Hello, Øyvind. Thank you so much for accepting to do this interview. This is something that is quite extraordinary to meet a man like you. So just wanted to say thank you and welcome to Wisdom from North.
Thank you also, Jannecke. Very nice to be here. I watched some of the videos on your blog and I thought, wow, this is something that suits me and it would be great to be a part of it. So we're on a win-win.
Lovely. And what you have been through raises a lot of questions about who we are as human beings. And I want to get back to that later. But first, I would like for people who don't know your story, and I know there's been a documentary about you as well, the search for the memory.
Hunting Down Memory is the name of it, yeah.
So if you can take us back to the year 2000, you were 27 years old. What is it? What is the first thing you remember from that day?
Well, I'm not sure that it's the same day either, yeah, because several years after I thought I had a kind of continuous memory. But when we started going deeper into the situation, doing research, making the documentary, as time went by and I understood more, etc., etc., I guess I discovered that I've probably gone in and out of clear and unclear states of being or consciousness. So what seems to be very early is like a memory of a train. And I don't remember doing anything. That means like full passivity, basically just perceiving that people are communicating with me in some way, and thinking back, you know, I realize I'm on a train because I'm in the train cabin and the world is moving, passing outside, you know. And I guess that could have been close to a village, Jiangjiajie, where I start to have like what is knowledge of continuous memory, or I probably went in and out of clear and unclear states there also, but I know the village, I've been back there, and I had 2 falls. I don't remember them, but we met people that picked me up. I was unconscious, for example, in a dried out river. They picked me up, sent me to hospital in a city not too far away, and then either that was the last fall and I didn't come back, or I came back and I had another fall and I was taken into the house of some local people there and I met them again. For example, this is a part of the documentary. We went there searching for more information about what happened there. But I don't remember these falls, yeah, but we know that I had 2 falls. And I mean, those days being there was just being anywhere with anyone without knowing what I was doing, if I had a mission, if I had an identity. You know, there was no relation to these kind of questions or let's call them norms or situations in my mind at all. Now I was there just following the flow of the people, of the society that was happening around me, and a lot of information comes in, of course. Without thinking about that, a lot of information came in. Basically it was because I was in another state of mind, you know, and I wasn't aware of that, and I had lost sufficient kind of contact with this normal consciousness and what we maybe experience in everyday lives, to not worry and not understand my own situation. And when I look back now, I think that's probably positive, you know, because it was pretty serious in a way, but I was lucky. People took care of me without me knowing that they were actually taking care of me. You know, they probably understood that something had happened to me and they'd helped me also, but they didn't know exactly what. And so this kind of state of flow is like, I don't remember being hungry, but I remember eating. You know, maybe it was good that the public that the toilets were public, so I could see that people were doing what they had to do, and I just did it, without thinking I had to go. And I was in a group of people, I just followed them, I put my hand in my pocket, and I put also 5 on the table like all the others had, and I had been in a line and I had bought something, but I did not know that. I was just coincidentally in this group of people that was a line that moved towards a counter, and then I got it just like the others, and I looked around, and I was just mirroring kind of the society, without knowing that I was mirroring it. I was just doing it. Somebody said something, I would say the same back also. And interestingly, in Chinese, this works quite well, because a lot of questions and a way of phrasing things in the Chinese language has to do with repetition. And after, later when I got back to Europe and the first years, basically, I did this quite a lot. I didn't have a connection really to the emotional base of having an opinion, very strongly. But if old friends, for example, after I came back to Norway, I met a lot of them, and for example, they would take me somewhere. Should we go somewhere like Drammen, where we'd been before, in our past? And they said, go to Drammen. Should we go to Drammen? And I said, go to Drammen, just like a copy the last part of what they said, and they thought I meant yes, with an intention, but I just copied what they said.
This is so extraordinary. I just have to ask, did you understand who you was inside? Did you? It's difficult to identify with your situation in a way, because in a way we are our history and we're not. Because I know I'm Jannecke because I've done this and I have this family. And did you have a perception of who you were, or did you just feel like in a oneness with everyone, the state that many spiritual people have experienced? Or did you feel like a separation? I'm somebody, I feel inside, I know who I am in a way, like a soul. Yeah, this is a complicated question, but the perception of yourself, how did that feel like?
Well, if we relate, for example, self to ego or non-ego, these kind of things, there was no self in this way, and it took a while to develop it, and after some years I wanted to develop it, and I think I found what ego is, and then I also learned to kind of leave it behind. But this is later in the story, so if I go back to your question now, it was not that I did not have emotions. I was actually filled with many kinds of emotions. From the situations, so it was maybe the flow of the situation, the people around me. Like when connected to what I just told you, a lot of people try to explain me, for example, about family, about my mother before and after I met her, and it's like, you have to get to know your mother better. She's probably the most important person in your life, And when somebody communicates with you in this way very intensely, it's hard to not feel anything. So when somebody grabs you, and does like this, I had the feeling, from the physical grab, of course, but also the intention, the desire, what they wanted to tell me was there in me. But thinking about it slowly and later, I was like, many of these people don't really know my mother, and they didn't know her very well, So they were not talking about my mother. They were talking about their mother and the relation they had and had up through their life with their mother. And the importance that they were transmitting to me was the importance of the relation they had with their mother. And I could feel that in the moment, So I could feel the emotion of every moment, but I did not, let's say, get, or the emotion of every moment didn't get stuck with me. Because the next moment then it could be like, oh, my eyes were caught by these leaves, and then the leaves gave me the full kind of feeling of the moment, and I didn't have the emotion of that last important motherhood moment with me anymore right there and then. And it was of course not because I didn't want to give them credit, or that I wanted to ditch my mother or their mother or whatever. It was because the state of mind I was in was quite different, so I was filled with emotions of every moment, but I didn't kind of relate to it in the activating way, or what to say, how we build up, how we relate to emotions, how they stick with us, how we even expect maybe how we're supposed to feel, and therefore we feel that way, and then they stick with us and we can feel good or bad for a long time.
So you almost saw the world like a child in a way, like you were completely in the moment, not knowing how the world worked, if that's a good metaphor, I don't know.
I think that there are many similarities between the way children are and perceive everyday life and some of what I perceived. On the other hand, there are some differences, and I was not aware of it, and I mean I didn't look at the things like that then, so I'm telling now from my experiences and how perspectives have grown, and partly that is something of what I want to say, because I had a mind, kind of a developed grown-up adult mind in a way, and this is a process that most people spend 15-20 years of going through and developing it before you get to that. And although I did have it in a way, but I wasn't aware of it, so in some way I didn't have it also, but that mind was functioning well enough to absorb the situations, so that when I started to get back in touch with this, I call it emotional base, or maybe it's our emotional memory, and maybe all of that, again, briefly said, is the sum of all the situations that have given us emotions while we grow up. That becomes some kind of, if we're going to physicalize it, it's probably not a ball, but I'm holding my hands, maybe it's like chi, I don't know. But that could be very close to what also is called our personality. Right. And this way, because it's our emotions. And another example to kind of tell a little bit about that is all the friends, the old friends, the family and stuff that came and gave me the claps on the shoulder. Oh, it's so good to have you back. 2-3 years later, and the glimpse in the eye is back again. So for me, that when I went further through that, kind of, it seems that it's the contact with my past, the emotional part of my past, that slowly came back.
The glimpse in your eyes, or there?
Yeah. They were like, "Oh, it's back! It's you again." And I was like, we kind of knew you these years, but now you're really back. We didn't really know you. You were a little different, or this information is inside that kind of communication, which happened with quite a few people, and the glimpse then, this was about the same time as when I was, feeling that really reconnection probably to that emotional base, emotional memory. And then it came out through my eyes, maybe also, in a way that it hadn't when I was just feeling every situation, like I was saying. I was not without emotions, but I was maybe not in contact with the sum of all the emotions that I had in the same way that I gradually became, and then had another relation to my own emotionality than I had in the beginning, and this could be identity also, and this grown-up mind or adult brain or whatever, I mean, what part is difficult to say exactly what, but it had absorbed my own process. So when I then got more into feeling that connection and understanding reflections and doing reflections and analytics in another way than I did right after, it could actually, I was so close to all the happenings after amnesia still, so I could dig into a database of how I had actually perceived things after amnesia with this grown-up mind just after months or years, whereas a child, as I were kind of still answering that question, would probably need much more time to get into that, So there is a similarity with children indeed, but also that difference, and that's a quite big difference actually.
Right. When you, I don't know if you remember, but when you saw yourself in the mirror after losing your memory, did you recognize what you saw, or was it like a shock? Or that's a question I've been wondering about.
Yeah. Well, so that's an because when I now use the word mirroring society, that was what I was doing. In a way, this is related. But when I saw myself in the mirror, there was no reaction. Like I saw the others. And I'm not sure really if I understood that, because I could, when I see the others and I see a kind of a mirror scape, then suddenly the others that I could see with my eyes were there, plus something else, which, with analytical, logical thinking, I would probably then have this, oh, this is me. But I don't know, maybe it's because I did not have a relation to what is me, that this was just completely... there was nothing unnatural about that. There was nothing which made me think like, oh, what is that? Or not even, I cannot remember anything about having a feeling of that, actually.
What about the language? Your language was completely intact, right?
That is probably to exaggerate quite much.
Oh, okay.
But so this is a quite interesting process also, which one of the treasures for myself, of having had that grown-up mind that was actually perceiving my own development and then being able to dig into it quite early when I started realizing things. Had to do. One of the treasures comes from language and the difference between concrete and abstract expressions, which also kind of relates to what we just talked about with emotionality, because what gives you the feeling of understanding or knowing or the emotion of something, in the moment when we communicate? Well, if it's a microphone or a chair, it's pretty easy, you can hold it and then, if you listen to what comes out of it later, you kind of have a relation to that. A chair, you can sit on it, then when it's not there, you will fall. You have a drink of something, you have a glass, it's hard. Maybe it's cold, soothing, if you have a relation to what soothing is, or temperature, cold, warm, you have to have a relation to that first, before you say it. If you have developed a liking or unliking, you can say, I like this or not. In most cases you would be able to say that, okay, I'm less thirsty now anyway after you've been drinking. You have to have a relation to thirsty and not thirsty also, so you have these experiences. Anyway, they're pretty concrete, all of those, so when you tell me, hey, give me that glass, I don't have to think about all that, and I know with the feeling and an understanding what is a glass. But if you're talking about doubt or help or gratitude or memory loss or ambition or willpower or
even metaphors, perhaps.
Metaphor, like the word itself. Like, how can you sit on that? Do you think it will hold you up? The metaphor of a chair, that's going to be interesting. Or love or stupidity. And so that, the feeling of what it is, kind of, you need cultural and experiential references maybe. And those links connect to what is your emotional base maybe already, or the emotional core, the memory of the situations you've been through already, that build up this core that might also be close to personality, or at least a part of it. Or maybe personality is a part of that, I don't know. But that was not really there. So this is one reason why I was copying people also, like I said before, like just saying, and because they, of course, went from their way of looking at things in the understanding of our communication. It's like they thought I had an opinion, because that's how they were used to communicating, and they didn't feel that I was just copying them, or the few words in the language, in the phrases,
So in a way you could speak the words, but you couldn't quite understand what you were saying, but you could speak it?
Exactly, yeah. And it worked quite well. And in most cases there would be some kind of understanding, of course. But in some cases maybe not, and I wasn't aware of it. And I also had, it did create quite a few, I guess, we could call them misunderstandings or humoristic situations, And after a while, I also started realizing that in many cases, people were laughing, and I was laughing, but they were laughing for other reasons that I was laughing. And they were like, in case asking me, oh, so you did get that point, And the point is quite abstract also. It's like, I was like, point, and they would think that I said yes. Or got that point, that's my copying then. And they think, I got it. And I didn't get it, I was like, point, And then the humor in general is quite interesting as a cultural thing also. And I was several places, because I also did do, I undertook trips to, when I started realizing more, to get to know people that I understood, and I was told that I knew other places, So I went on a kind of a world tour, recapping and reconnecting to people after a couple of years.
So how did your family and friends react to this? I mean, it must have been very difficult for them.
Exactly. I think it was for many. I know it was for quite a few, and then I think it was for even more. And this I know now, and I can relate to that now, but I did not know that at the time. So I was having a a good time with them without, for example, knowing and realizing that they were also trying to help me to recover or get back, or maybe even to become what I was for them before. Because it struck me after some years, when I got all these claps on the shoulder and stuff, also people were happy. It was easier from quite a few to suddenly relate to me and communicate with me. And in a way, it wasn't only me, it was also they were helping themselves also. I mean, in a positive way, I understand this, yeah, it's not like a criticism at all, you know, but they wanted me to be like that, because some, at least, because they felt they lost something, and that was uncomfortable, you know. And I didn't realize that, you know, and I didn't realize they were helping me, and I didn't have an emotional connection to gratitude, for example, like I was talking before. And then when I finally kind of got that, this is one of the good examples, you know, of reconnecting to a deeper meaning of an expression which is related to a lot of experiences. It's like I understood that all these people, maybe hundreds of different situations, had been trying to help me, and I didn't really know what help was, you know. So I didn't know they were helping me, and then suddenly this kind of appeared in me emotionally. And I was like crying like in cartoons, you know. It's like almost like the tears were like popping out. It was like gratitude for hundreds and hundreds of situations at once, in one situation. But of course not at all negative, you know, only positive, an amazing experience actually, you know. It's like feeling the gratitude and reconnecting, I guess, to gratitude, because I hope that I also had, you know, a feeling of gratitude before
is there some kind of a sorrow when you now think about that, or do you feel that you've lost 27 years of your life? Is there some grief over that?
No, because I do not feel that I lost them, particularly not in the beginning. I didn't know how to relation to it, yeah, to those 27 years. I had to build up that relation. What are 27 years in a life, in society, with memory and friends and etc., etc. And when I got it, I also got in touch with this emotional base again. And then I was actually in touch with the emotionality of those 27 years, although maybe like the main kind of part of the visual of the memory that was said to be affected was the visual memory. But of course the different kind of sense memories, they are very much connected, you know. It's like the senses, very rarely you have just one sense working, so that's why you have the memories connected also. But maybe memories is a place where you can only have a voice, or only have an image, or only have a smell or something. So in this case the senses can have separate memories, and my visual memory bank, to put it that way, was basically gone. Right. Or the connection to it, you know, because there was visuality in the beginning. There was a lot of colors, much more than images, and then images came and connected, and slowly that connected to the newfound memories, and then later to the connection again, reconnection with that emotional base that I'm talking about. And this is the reason why I don't feel, I think now, that I have lost 27 years, because when I got into a good reconnection with that, and I felt that this is not only from the 2-3 years after amnesia, this is, I'm getting in touch with the emotional base of my whole past here. And from that point I also had that feeling of the understanding of past, present, future, and being able to link it all. And before that I didn't miss it, because I didn't have that same connection to it, you know.
Have you ever, I don't know if you answer that, but have you ever gotten some visions from the past? I mean, in dreams or in some states that then bring flashbacks?
Much likely, but very difficult to separate, because all the new things that gone together and mixed with new experiences, new learnings, connecting again or reconnecting, mixing it with the original emotional base, if we could put it that way, you know, makes me think that this is probably a part of my past. But has it been retold to me? Have I seen that image? Has it gone in, or is some of it the original? Is some of it reconstructed? You know, this is not. I'm not developed in the way that makes me able to separate that, actually. So I think so. I feel, I mean, as I feel a connection to my past, I know there's still many, at least visual things and things that I might not know, and, you know, things from school or other things, you know, they when stories come, that becomes clear then that okay, there's still many things missing. But I feel it when they talk about it, you know, I feel that I'm a part of it, so I feel that it's a part of my life also.
I have to ask you a little bit about belief systems. I know you know many languages. You speak Chinese and I think for 3 or 4 or 5 languages.
Yeah, I guess it's more like 7, 8, like on a fluent.
Right, that's quite extraordinary. And I'm wondering about, well, was this a skill that you have? Have you been told that you're good with languages, for instance? Or was this something that is easier for you now to learn because you don't have perhaps that many perceptions that I cannot do this, I cannot do that? Because in life, if something goes wrong in an early age, we can get this belief that I'm not good at learning languages, for instance, or I'm not good at math. Yeah. And I can imagine perhaps that you didn't have those obstacles in the way, like a mindset that says I cannot do that or I cannot do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Am I
your
into something?
Imagination is great. Exactly. You know, I didn't have that, but I mean, I also had a good deal of that linguistic learning in me, and I had to relearn the difference, the abstract, concrete thing and the emotional thing happen in every language, but the words were kind of there. There was some interesting, quite amusing actually, when you look at it, at least now, situations from the beginning when people were speaking to me. You know, I was in a setting in China, in Beijing, for example. Tourists, lots of tourists around, you know, so I was hearing all these things. I didn't at that point, you know, have the differentiational knowledge of languages, but I can perceive and still remember the feeling of, you know, different kind of sounds. And people approached me or I approached them, I'm not really sure, but at some point I spoke, I know now, I think it was Spanish and German at least. It could have been some French also, or English, in addition to some Chinese. You know, I had a little Chinese at that point, but very little actually. Chinese I learned later when I went back. But this is now shortly, not long time after the memory loss I'm talking about. You know, and somebody asked me about something, and German was stuck in my mind, and I saw some of the people I'd seen again, I think, you know, and I went up to them and I had spoken Spanish with them first. But then I spoke in German to somebody else, so German got stuck in my mind, and then I spoke German to them directly, and they were like, yeah, you know, and I didn't perceive the weirdness now at that point, but the look they had, you know, gave me that grown-up mind absorbed that, you know, all these details was absorbed, that I could go back later and understand what had actually happened to me in different communicational settings and stuff, you know, and that was then probably because I had those languages in me, and they were just like spurred by what was there last. And when I was reading, I also had several like books or articles and things, lecture in different languages with me, but they were all with the same characters, you know, the ones that we use here in the West, and I didn't perceive that they were in different languages, you know, when I was reading them. And Chinese written at that point, I don't think I had any knowledge, because I didn't perceive that there was anything coming out from those characters. You know, when I got back to China 2-3 years later, I started learning that. And so yeah, this relation to language was quite different also, and language related to culture. Now, of course, as kind of cultural bridges and these kind of things, is some of what really interests me a lot, and some of why I spend so much time on these projects. Also, it's the people, of course, and the connection to the people, but they are or they carry, I don't know how to say it, their culture is I mean, the limitation of words, which also brings us to other things, you know. I do a lot of digressions. Here is one. Most of us start to use language as early as we can, and we use it as long as we can in our lives. And basically linguistic systems are logic systems. You know, so when we are getting to things that are not so logic and that are maybe not so easy to explain with words, we haven't practiced so much. We practice language every day a lot, hours and hours, you know, but we haven't spent a lot of time on other things. And that's surely one, in many societies at least, that's not true for all. And of course people with a mind for it, they do take this time on their own and understand this and develop other sides also. But that is exactly what is needed to to go beyond the limitations of language and words. You have to spend time on it. You have to practice it just like we practice our speaking, our communicational skills. But anyway, that was one digression, which is related, of course, and it brings us back to language and culture and the what it gives, getting to know people, making this project, building these bridges. Every time it's different. It gives something new, something more. It's like personal development. There is no limit to it, because there's different persons, and even if it's the same people in two projects, well, you're in a new setting, with new surroundings. It's not the same time, whatever that is that we put there, and yeah, it just becomes more. It gives more, or it's the world giving.
Have this made you ask a lot of the big questions, like since this happened to you, like why are we here, or what is your, if you want to share your belief system about life in general? I mean, I assume that you would get many questions, many spiritual questions, having gone through this.
Yes, well, first of all, and I respect in general what people have of spirituality or religious connections in their own life, and I'm not that of a big supporter of very organized big
You're not a supporter, or?
Not a supporter of very big organizations that, like we see the bigger religions, in the way that they they are organizational systems almost like big companies, to organize society, to make economic profit and these kind of things. So I understand that people are attracted by them and parts of it, but I think for me the personal relation to everything that we are a part of is so evident. It's like it's there in this moment. It's nothing that we cannot not be a part of. So if you want to add on to that, for example, and be a part of an organization, that's fine, of course. If this organization is very separating then and making a lot of differences and maybe even conflicts with others, then I don't see the big point of that. Or I everybody finds their way, but it seems very limiting. It seems also limiting for what you can experience and develop in yourself. And this could be a good time to get back to what I mentioned quite early, to talk a little bit about the process of going from not having a relation to self or ego, and then to develop it, finding like, okay, some more, I want to find out more, and I want to go back to China, I want to find out more about what happens, I want to find out more about myself, and what am I, is this, me, how does it work? Why? Is that ego? And for example, by going to China and making the documentary, which we started like 5-6 years after it happened, I did find out a lot of things. We did find out answers to many questions. We didn't find 100% answer to exactly what happened. We can never be completely sure about a lot of things. And just to relate to that is something I appreciate also, in a way that, okay, maybe that's okay then. We found some answers. That was me. This was me. Maybe I'd gone up in the Himalayas or close to them, looking for horse-riding Rasta nomads, which was a part of the story. Some friends had helped me do research on those, and I was supposed to go looking for them, But when I start kind of having this continuous memory, which was not fully continuous in the beginning, but I slowly went into that, in that village, Jannecke, that I talked about earlier, that is 2,000 kilometers from there, from this area with those nomads. Something must have happened. Why did I go? Maybe I was looking at it and didn't find them. Many people said they all cut their hair and they moved into the villages when we were there looking again. And maybe that had happened. Maybe I was after a while content, and then I went to this other place. But there are still 2-3 weeks where there's like no real clues. What happened? Where was I? I must have been from in between. And then something has happened. That triggered the amnesia. But finding the answer to these questions, kind of also finding an answer to, okay, that was like a part of that was me, the ego, myself, before, in a way, and then realizing that I was content with also not knowing everything. It was like, okay, so it must be related to something else then. And then I started, digging into reading about this and
about amnesia or spirituality?
About ego,
Yeah.
About not only ego, non-ego, the different kind of spiritual directions, ways of understanding the universe, ways of feeling the universe. And I started doing these small games with myself, just like language again, and the limitations, and also how they kind of structure our minds, when we learn, and the difference then between maybe some languages and how the mind is structured is fascinating to think about. Also difficult to measure in scientific ways. But okay, that was another digression. So we're coming into these games of, okay, let's cut out I, for example. Let's find other ways, and let's take away my, or ours, or these possessive things. Finding other ways, using the language passively, or just changing I to we. When I said, takes an hour or two, I found every time, and your full kind of feeling of the space around you changes. It's kind of a game that you can do with yourself, or in a at a dinner table even, or whatever. And for me at least, it changed a lot, and it was back to very similar to that I then could again go back in my database, the absorbed emotional experience that I actually had probably right after amnesia, that I wasn't really aware of, consciously. It's like, oh, this is pretty close to how it was like, and hey, that's all together. I like science, for example. I find it interesting, and it has taught us a lot, and it's great to find like something, and I'm looking up when I do this. It's like my mind, this is the structure, how does it happen? I'm thinking of a phenomena, like something which is something above me seemingly, because I'm looking up and I'm kind of doing this. I could have looked down, but I'm not doing that. This is the automatic, it's perceiving yourself and how your automated reactions are. Yeah? So I'm doing this, I'm seeing a phenomena. The science looks at it from one way, from another, a third way, and it's really interesting. But we could not have done that unless there was a context to take it out from. This cannot be looked at. It could not exist just like that. You cannot exist without the rest. What are you, I? Then there is no functionality in the wholeness. Then, so to say. And by these games and these kind of maybe realizations, because I think it had been in me also there right after amnesia. I was living that, but then I went through this process of growing an ego, discovering the ego, being aware of it, and then kind of letting it go again. And now then using I, it's like it doesn't feel like I, it is, I feel when I speak that in the language, it feels like, okay, it's all included. Also in a way of communication, I mean, it is like that when I don't speak, but it is also like that when I speak it.
Do you mean that you found your ego in a way, so you know what it is in yourself, and now you're going back a bit, like you can choose whether to go into that ego state or to go back to that state where you feel more connected to everything?
This could be a way of describing it, yeah, that ego can be a state that you can choose. But it's like a role then, like it's something put on. It's maybe not the base, the core itself. It's like you put on in everyday life many roles. Yeah.
I think that's what many of us are searching for, to find that state that you are in a way, feeling that connection, yeah, and letting go of the ego. And we talk a lot about, self-love today, but somehow it doesn't feel relevant to you, because you seemed to be in such just acceptance of everything.
Yes, I mean the love, for example, is there. You can put on self-love roles also maybe, and you can do different kind of lovers roles in many ways. But acceptance is there, absolutely, and this was also something that was there before I maybe went through a process of realizing that it wasn't necessarily automatically there. But then still, because I enjoy and I enjoy being there, I like this attitude, this approach, this way of being, then I discover also, okay, so then I should keep on directing myself in that way or those directions then, because I don't want to develop into something else, like for example only having a feeling of an ego, because I didn't feel that that was my thing really, because it felt really limiting, and I remember also, you know, several challenging feelings around it, that I wasn't very, you know, at ease. I wasn't comfortable. I didn't want to have it that way.
So fascinating. I've read also, I want to ask you this, the last question, that you're happy for this experience. You find that you're grateful for it. Is that so?
Yes, I cannot say that I'm not, you know, and when I feel it now, right, I feel grateful, you know, I feel grateful for being here with you. It's a nice day, it's good. I cannot, I guess, really fully know how it would have been if it had not happened. But what I can know, fully, at least I feel that, you know, is how it is now and how it has been. And although I've gone through challenging situations after this also, I've dealt with them, and for me, that has given me even more, you know. So although it was hard, I became even more grateful. And someone say you cannot really multitask with your mind. It's just flicking between different apps in a way. It's like neuroscience. But I think really it's possible to multitask with emotions. At least personally, I have that feeling, like I can experience the hardship, the sorrow or the anger or whatever in a situation, and at the same time I feel an ease and a gratitude there and then in the same situation, you know, when I have this. And I appreciate that also, that I'm able to do that and live that, you know. So yeah, all in all, I'm just fantastically grateful to be alive and experience what life brings along.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Thank you very much also. It was great to be here with you.
And thank you for watching, guys, and remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't before. Much light from beautiful Norway. Bye bye.